What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. As many of you know, racing is not always that cheap hobby we dreamt it would be. There's always some type of cost that we don't account for lingering around the corner, and there's always an easy way to overspend on these cars without realizing it. In fact, we learned that the hard way for ourselves last year, spending well over the amount of money we wanted to spend. Of course, that did include the cost of our car as a whole, but we still spent significantly more than we wanted to throughout the entire year. With our main goal of keeping our overall costs down, we really got to get a hold of the money that we're putting into our program and figure out how to spend it a little more wisely. Now, I mentioned last year that we spent way more money than we were anticipating, and a large part of that is just because we didn't really have a budget for last year. We never had an idea of where our money was going. We didn't have anything allocated. All we really knew was that we were going to be showing up to the race, spending money on gas to get there and back, spending money on our pit passes, and going on from there. So we didn't really have a detailed budget that we really needed to try and keep track of our expenses. And that's definitely something I want to change for this year. So we took the time to comb through all of our expenses from last year, comb through them, break them down into separate categories, and figure out which of those expenses will be continuing on this year and remain mostly the same. Now, our budget this year consists of three main groups. First one being our annual renewals. This includes all of our memberships and everything we need every single year that's going to renew. The second one being our race day cost, which is everything involved with us getting to the track, all of our pit passes, everything at the track. And then the third thing we have budgeted for this year is going to be all of our maintenance for the car. This is going to be everything from our off-season maintenance to all of the time-sensitive stuff like oil changes and spark plug changes and stuff like that. I suppose you could add a fourth section to your budget to include things like upgrades. If you're still on the Bilstein shocks and you want to upgrade to the AFCOs, or if you want to upgrade your rear brakes to the rear disc setup, that's also an option. But for us right now, we don't plan on doing any upgrades this year, so we left that section blank for ourselves, but that's always something you can add into your budget. Now, what kind of stuff do we need to renew every single year when racing legend cars? Well, because they're sanctioned by INEX, we usually have to drop about $175 plus some fees on a membership every year, which for us this year came out to $187.90 because they introduced the process last year where now every single membership needs to go through the Pit Pay app, and they have processing fees, and it does up the price a little bit, but not terribly. We also have to go through and get our car registered with Colorado National Speedway, because regardless of what class you run down there, you do have to pay for your registration fee. It is $75, so it's not the end of the world, but it is another cost that happens every single year. We also have our membership dues for the Rocky Mountain Legend Racing Association, which runs at all tracks here in the Rocky Mountain region. And since CNS uses the MyLapse transponder system, we do have to get the subscription for this renewed every single year. It's about $120 through their website, maybe a little bit more now. I haven't looked in a little while, but it is a line item we add to our budget every year. And for our final line item in our annual renewals, we do spend a couple dollars on renewing our live timing app on our phone. This just helps us keep track of our times while we're at the track during race day and helps keep us in the loop for things like that. So after looking up the subscription renewal for the transponder, we end up bringing our total here to $421.89 on annual renewals alone. Now, when it comes to our track day costs, we're budgeting right now for a 9-race schedule, assuming that all of those races take place, as well as 5 additional practice days, just in case we want to take some time during the season to go up on a Friday and spin a couple laps during a practice session. We've gone ahead and thrown those numbers into the budget, and it kind of breaks down like this. The first thing we look at are the pit passes required to get into the track on race day. We typically only need to buy 2 pit passes per day that we're there, and since the pit passes are priced at $35 each right now, assuming that they don't go up in price before we start racing, it'll be $70 per night multiplied by the 9 races, which comes out to $630 in pit passes alone. And then for our practice days, assuming we spend a similar amount on the passes, they charge $25 per driver to show up and $10 per spectator. So that gives us $35 a night. Multiply that by 5 practices, and that gives us $175 in practice pit passes. Now, the tanks on these cars are not very big. They hold about 4 gallons of fuel, which typically will last us over 100 laps. And with most of our main events only being 25 to 30 laps, we typically can go a couple days without needing to fill up our fuel jugs or our fuel cell. So we priced our fuel at spending about $30 per time we go and doing that about 5 times, maybe 6 times throughout the year. So we're right at 150, 180 bucks on car fuel alone. And then of course we have to travel to and from the track, which costs us about $100 per trip. Factoring in the 9 races and 5 practices going to and from with the trailer, it usually costs us about $100 a trip. So factoring in everything, we'll spend about $1,400 on gas this year. And on top of that, we also either have to board our dogs or have someone come to the house to watch them while we're gone. And since we have 2 of them, it's usually double the cost of what everyone else does. So we ended up budgeting based on the fact of needing to board them with our local animal hospital, which costs about $99 a night. And when we factor in all of the nights that we're gonna be gone racing, it'll come out to just shy of $1,400 as well. And then for our final line item on our race day cost, we like to set aside some money so that we can buy some pictures from the track photographers that take pictures on the track. It's a good way for us to support our local photographers, but also help keep their business going, as well as getting some cool shots of our cars so that we can use for various purposes, such as marketing and stuff like that. So we always try and add that line in our budget whenever we get the chance to try and help those guys out. So after tallying up all of our race day costs for the year, we're looking at spending about $3,838 this year on just going to the track and showing up. And now this brings us up to the final piece that we have budgeted for our car this year, which is our overall maintenance costs. Broken up into 2 groups, we have our off-season maintenance and our time-sensitive maintenance. Our off-season maintenance mostly consists of everything we replace during our off-season. We have a fixed number budgeted for all the bolts we plan on replacing, all of the radius rod and heim joints we bought this year. We threw in our brake caliper seals that we rebuilt. And we also have a handful of things that we haven't done quite yet, such as replacing our fuel filter, replacing the spark plugs, doing our oil change, doing all of our trailer maintenance, which is a big one that a lot of people probably don't really pay attention to, making sure that everything on the trailer is good to go, getting things like our rivets to remount our body, getting the vinyl we need to put some new numbers and all that stuff on the car. So there's a lot of things that we have in our off-season maintenance cost that some people may not think about, or maybe they do and just don't have to pay for it because maybe they have some sponsors to cover that. And then for things like time-sensitive maintenance, we try and throw in things like our oil changes, our spark plug changes, our gear fluid changes. And then we also have in there our tires, just in case we decide to buy a set this year. Right now, I don't think we will buy a set, so that'll be roughly $700 saved right there, assuming that the tires are priced at $175 each. But as of right now, we have it in our budget, but we're not planning to spend that money just yet. So all in all, the way it stands right now, our season's gonna cost us roughly $7,200 just to run the year, which broken down is right about $600 a month if you were to put money aside from your personal accounts and whatnot. So obviously that's what we plan to spend. We're not gonna try and go over that by too much, but I know that we will more than likely spend more than we budgeted for, just because it's for the most part inevitable in racing. You're always gonna have something go wrong on the car without really realizing it and needing to spend money on the parts you don't want to. You could throw into your budget some like accidental costs, just in case you need to replace your lower control arms or anything else that may need to be replaced as a result of a crash or something like that. You could also throw line items on there if you were planning to upgrade a couple things, such as an engine rebuild or upgrading to the new rear disc brakes that we have available now. So there's always something that you can upgrade on these cars. It's never going to stop evolving, so you can always set money aside for that. But for the most part, this is our annual budget for the year, and we're gonna try and stick to it as best as we can. And of course, when the year comes to an end, we'll go through everything we have that we tracked, tally up everything, get all of our totals for the year, compare that to how we budgeted, and hopefully it's not too much, but we will put that on the channel probably in about October, November timeframe. We did do a video last year about how much we spent total on our rookie season, which was quite a bit more than we had wanted to, but if you're interested in watching that, we'll have it here in the end screen pretty soon. So if you guys want to use the budget that we came up with as a template, you're more than welcome to. I'll try my best to find a way to share it with you guys, so it'll more than likely be linked down in the description somewhere, and you'll be able to tailor this to how you need it. You can always add items that you may need or get rid of stuff you don't need. Like, I know a lot of people probably don't need to have that dog boarding line in there. So it's always something that you can tailor to yourself. I'll have all the formulas in there so that everyone can just plug in their numbers, and you'll just go to the total sheet and figure out what your numbers for the year are. But I hope this video helps you guys piece out a budget for yourselves and maybe save you guys a little bit of money. I definitely appreciate you guys watching today, and I hope to catch you in the next one.
Find a place with a view. The pain is never gonna stop if it's controlling you. I know the time can